1.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the June 8, 2020 regular meeting of the Hillsborough County City County Planning Commission. We thank you for attending this meeting. Your comments and participation are encouraged. All participants in the meeting will be muted until their opportunity to speak. To minimize feedback in audio, planning commissioners should unmute themselves and turn on their camera to indicate they would like to speak. You can also send a chat to Melissa if you would prefer to be recognized that way. Please be sure to state your name at the beginning of your remarks for the benefit of the clerk. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments. Please click the raise hand button illustrated on the screen. It will be unmuted when it is your turn to speak. Please wait until the chair calls on you to begin speaking. State your name at the beginning of your comments and adhere to the time limits. Members of the public may also ask questions to staff at any time during the meeting by typing into the questions chat box illustrated on the lower right of the screen. If anyone has difficulties watching via HTV and would like to speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, please call 813-273-3774, extension 376. I'll say that once more. It's 813-273-3774, extension 376. For action items, the meeting will be conducted as follows. The agenda item will be introduced. Staff will give their presentation with a 15-minute time limit. The applicant will be given an opportunity to make a presentation with a 15-minute time limit. Following presentations, members of the public may address the Planning Commission when recognized by the chair. Public comment will be heard for 3 minutes per person. The applicant will be afforded a 3-minute period for rebuttal or response. Planning commissioners will ask questions. Public comment will be closed. Then upon a motion, second, and discussion, a vote will be taken. With that introduction, I'll ask Commissioner Dix to lead us in the prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. All rise.
And if you will please join with me in an invocation. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day and for the opportunity to serve our community. We are thankful and grateful to live in a country that is free and open and allows people to both voice their opinions, their concerns, and even their grievances. The country has been hurting over the last several months, both with the coronavirus and for those who are feeling injustice and seeking to have those grievances heard. Please watch over us, help us through this time. Let us come forward and be better people for it. Guide us today as we make reasoned decisions and deliberations on matters coming before Hillsborough County. It is in your name we pray. Amen. Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Dix. Roll call, please.
Good afternoon, Thrower.
Here.
Bernstein.
Here.
Cardenas.
Here.
Dix.
Here.
Dowdy. Dowdy. Green. Green. Joseph.
Here.
Joseph? Yeah, very good. Press?
Here.
Here.
Marino? Marino? Powell?
Here.
Oh, Clark.
Dickerson?
Here.
Rodriguez?
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting from May 11th, 2020. Any comments? Someone like to make a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we got a motion. Was that Commissioner Powell? Or Commissioner Powell made the motion? Do we got a second?
Second.
Okay, who made the second?
Commissioner Joseph.
Commissioner Joseph. So we got a motion by Commissioner Powell, second by Commissioner Joseph. Any discussion before we vote? Okay, no discussion. All in favor of the minutes as written? Say, I guess we're going to do a roll call vote.
Very good. Thrower?
Yes, approved.
Bernstein?
Yes, approved.
Cardenas?
Yes, approved.
Dix?
Yes.
Dowdy? Green? Joseph?
Yes.
Kress?
Yes.
Marino? Powell?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, thank you. So the minutes are approved. Next on our item, I'm going to let, we have special guests today, and I'm going to let Melissa introduce them.
Yes, thank you. We're thrilled to have Mike Merrill, County Administrator, joining us today. He's in his last month as County Administrator, and so I asked him to join us to share our appreciation for his service as the County Administrator, which is a job I cannot even imagine undertaking, and all the things that you have to deal with. But in particular, to share our appreciation for his partnership with our organization over the last decade, but in particular for me over the last 5 years as I've served as the executive director. He has really been a tremendous partner on so many different projects, and I think it's easy to say that this is by far the best relationship that our organization has ever had with a county administrator. And I just want to say thank you, Mike, for that. But in particular, you've led a lot of initiatives for the county related to transportation, growth, development, how our built environment here impacts the quality of life in our community. And been great to have been a part of that, and that you've been inclusive in bringing the Planning Commission into that has really meant a lot to our organization, and that you've been willing to tackle some of these challenges in really innovative ways. I wish after all our conversations about planning, I had the ability to give you an honorary AICP, because I think you've earned
I
it.
told you that's what I wanted.
But in lieu of that, I just wanted to have the opportunity to thank you and recognize what you've done for the community, and for input and the partnership that you've created between your staff and the Planning Commission staff. I also wanted to add that Commissioner Dowdy couldn't be here today. He's traveling for work, but he wanted to mention the leadership that you took in the transportation discussion, particularly going all the way back to the policy leadership group for transportation for economic development in, like, I don't know, 2011, 2012. And he remembered recognizing that as when he was chair of the Planning Commission back then, with an award at our award ceremony. So he had wanted me to say thank you and for those efforts. So thank you, Mike. Here you go.
Well, this is a great surprise, and I really appreciate you having me here and letting me spend a few minutes with you. And so it's been a great journey, and it's been easy having a great partnership with someone like Melissa. It's really, she's really brought a real open-minded, open-hearted, approach to this, which makes it easy to work with someone who's coming from that place and has the best interest of the community at heart, and has a great board behind her. And it all works. I mean, it's been difficult. We've been through an awful lot, and still a lot of work to do. But I think, as they say, I think I'm leaving things in a better place, I hope, and wish you all the best. And thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Any commissioners want to make any comments or anything?
I'd like to, if you don't-
things, but I was going to wait to see if anybody else wants to say anything. Commissioner Dix?
Yes, if you don't mind, real quick, to our county administrator, and let me call you Mike, because I do consider you a friend. You've been a great friend for many, many years to Hillsborough County because of your service, and you've been one who has always remembered that Eastern Hillsborough County and Plant City is also still part of the county. For that, we're ever grateful. I am kind of thoughtful here as you've been leading us so well through this lockdown and the reemergence from it and the restarting of our economy. And at the same time, you're phasing down your own. You're going back into lockdown and retirement. I hope it will serve you well after nearly 3 months of lockdown. I personally think I will never retire, but I think you can afford it. Nonetheless, you've done a wonderful job, and I want you to know that we are all very, very thankful for your service. It's a better place because of you. You always led with a steady hand and never let people get you ruffled. And that was true even when people would scream and holler at times. So you've been a great example as well as a great leader. And we certainly do appreciate your service. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, John. Thanks so much.
Any other comments from any other commissioners? Anyone else want to speak? Commissioner Bernstein.
Hey, Steve.
Mike, it's a pleasure. You're going to be sorely missed. And I just want to echo Melissa's sentiments and those of so many other people who I know have found that you've always led by example. And it's so easy, particularly in these challenging times, to run the other way when public service beckons. And you never did that. You always kind of embraced the role, regardless of the challenges. And there have been many. But there's no question in my mind that we're much better off for the service you put in. You've left some big shoes to fill. And I wish I had more time to work with you in the capacity of the Planning Commission, but I sure relish the opportunities to work with you over at the Chamber and watched how you worked with so many disparate elements of our community, but you always applied the same level of objectivity and solid judgment. And I can't wait to see what the next chapter has in store for you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Commissioner Bernstein, thank you. Any other commissioners? Comments? I'll wait a second and make sure. Okay, no other comments. I wanted to echo everybody else's comments, Mr. Merrill, Mike. I think I've been on this board for about 8 years now. I agree with Melissa. The relationship between the Planning Commission and the county has never been better, as far as I can tell. We work well together. I think the Planning Commission has a very good relationship with the county. We work well. I think things are running efficiently, and I think you've done. I echo everybody's comments in terms of your leadership and how you've led the county administrator. I think Phil, body-wise, is past, but I think you've left in good shape. And I think you've done an excellent job. So thank you.
Well, thanks again so much. And I wish you all well. I know Melissa's got a great partner to continue to work with, and Lucia. I know that you're really working hard with her, and better, even better things are ahead. This has been a rough few months for everyone. And, it's, I think, a testament to our community that I think we've really done a good job of weathering all of this. I think that when you look around the country, we haven't seen some of the really horrible things happen. And I think that really is a testament to the fact we're strong at our core, and we all have the best interests of the community at heart. And so with that, thanks again, and I wish you all well. See you on the other side.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, we are going on to our next item on our agenda, which is public input. If there's anybody out there who'd like to speak on any items that are not on our agenda today, please, this is your time. I'll check with Melissa to see if we have anyone.
Raise their hand or send a chat if they.
We'll give them a minute just to make certain.
Okay. I don't see anything.
Okay. We're going to move on to that. Oh,
I would just like to note for the clerk that the Commissioner Green joined the meeting.
Thank you. We have him.
Okay, great. Thank you.
okay. Next up on our agenda is item number 3. It's the appointment of the MPO CAC representative. Currently, it's Rick Richmond. We have who's done, I think, an excellent job as the MPO CAC representative for us. But we have to decide. We have 3 applicants. And my thought is, are they all 3 available to speak to us? Okay. My thought is we'll go through the list, the order, the list that we have on the screen. And how much time are we allowing per person, Melissa?
We told them 3 minutes each.
Okay. Well, let me scroll down and see who the first one is.
Should be Josephine. Yeah.
Amato, yep. We'll let
I am
Josephine
here.
Amato introduce yourself, and you have 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be the CAC representative for us. Thank you.
Hi. I was going to show my screen and give you my 3-minute speech. If you give me 1 minute, sorry, managing all of this. Can everyone see the screen?
Yes.
Yes. So good afternoon. I appreciate the commissioners for considering me for Citizens Advisory appointment to the MPO. My name is Josephine Amato. I'm a resident of Lithia, Florida, a mom, wife, advocate, nonprofit director, therapist, and involved citizen. I would like to highlight why I would be a good fit for the MPO and our community. After moving around the world for 30 years in service to our nation, my active duty military family relocated to Hillsborough County in 2013, when my husband was assigned to SOCOM at MacDill Air Force Base. Looking for community, diversity, opportunity for our family, we decided to finally establish roots and make Hillsborough County our forever home. I've since founded Safe Bus for Us, a nonprofit organization advocating for student safe paths to school and the triangle of safety that will help us reach 0 child pedestrian deaths in Hillsborough County. My organization, Safe Bus for Us, is a subject matter expert in the area of child pedestrian safety in Hillsborough County. The organization works successfully with the county and the Sheriff's Department for the expansion of school crossing guard program. We work diligently with the county to create positive community meetings with school leaders. We seek solution-based approaches for child pedestrian safety. We highlighted human trafficking risks for child pedestrians and have actively conducted detailed safety audits of child pedestrian paths to school throughout Hillsborough County. As the founding director of Safe Bus for Us, my boots on the ground approach and grassroots information regarding many transportation and pedestrian issues our county faces is invaluable. I believe my skill set can be useful to the MPO. I have firsthand life experience how transportation equity is vital to ensure equal access to education, employment, life enrichment activities, and the ability to participate in civic responsibilities. I was born and raised in Spanish Harlem and have been taking public transportation independently my entire life since the age of 5. As a military spouse, I have been privileged to live in diverse rural, suburban, and urban communities. I've utilized transportation services in DC, Atlanta, Seattle, California, Europe, Central America, and Southwest Asia. My knowledge of the needs and the solutions in different communities provides global insight to problem solving in our community. For example, on a recent tour of our traffic control area, I inquired if we've received Department of Homeland Security grants. In my experience, traffic control is a vital component to the war on terrorism. Several of our cities have utilized such funding. As a practicing mental health therapist, I have over 3 decades of experience working in multidisciplinary teams in different socioeconomic groups and bring in the diverse setting. It is my hope to be able to continue to contribute to our community and be part of the team that creates positive change for the constituents of Hillsborough County. I thank you for your time and your consideration for this appointment. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Josephine. The next up is Dean Pfeiffer. Am I saying that correctly?
Close. Pfeffer.
Pfeffer, okay. Dean Pfeffer. Welcome.
Yeah.
Please
Thank
state
you.
your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Dean Pfeffer, 2910 Clubhouse Drive, Plant City, Florida. I have been here at Hope Lutheran. I'm the senior pastor. Been here, it's 24 years this month that I've been serving this congregation. Moved here from Sebring, born and raised up on Long Island in New York. graduate of Long Island University, Master of Public Administration. Worked for a member of Congress for a number of years. Prior to working for him, I was an aide to the Senate Majority Leader of the New York State Senate, and an aide in his office for a while until his passing, and then worked for Grumman Aerospace Corporation. Wife and I have 3 children. One is a banker, one is an assistant principal within Hillsborough County, and one is a language arts teacher in Hillsborough County in a middle school. And 3 grandchildren, one of which is starting kindergarten, hopefully when school starts in August, if it starts. That's the oldest of the 3 grandkids. Some of the people here say I do suffer from OCG, as they look when you see some of the junk hanging behind me, obsessive compulsive grandpa, which somebody diagnosed as being a good condition to have. So I'm happy with that. I've been involved in politics, legislative process all my life. I said master in public admin, bachelor in political science, and eventually that led me into the ministry. Also have a master of divinity. Started some doctoral work in the public administration field, but at that time it was like Fordham was around one of the few schools in New York that offered the doctorate in it, and I just did not want to commute into Manhattan in order to go to school at all. Wife and I are married 37 years. Both of us born and raised in New York. From there, we moved to Huntsville, Alabama, when I worked for Grumman Corp, and literally fell in love with a place that, moving from New York, nobody could imagine we'd ever settle there. And then from there, we went to St. Louis when I started at Concordia Seminary. Did a year of internship in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and then we've been down in Florida. We're in Sebring, and then here in Plant City. There's a lot of issues that I can see. You know, one of the biggest dealing and facing our county is definitely transportation. Living in New York, you know, you had it right there. You didn't think twice. And we have to move beyond where we are right now, which, you know, for this end of the county is at the negative aspect of public transportation. And having a wife who drives to downtown Plant City, downtown Tampa every day, you know, she's been enjoying the downtime working at home and the amount of gas that we've saved on a weekly basis. But transportation has to be dealt with logically and rationally for us to move forward and be looked at as a major metropolitan city.
Dean, I believe your time's up. Is that what? Okay. I wasn't sure.
3 minutes.
Or not. So, but thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Rick Richmond. Rick, please state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. This is Rick Richmond, 7406 Park Drive, Tampa. Good. I wanted to thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity. I hope everybody is well and staying safe. I'm here today seeking your support for reappointment as your MPO Citizens Advisory Committee appointment. When I was first approached the Planning Commission expressing my interest in serving, it was at the time the CAC struggled to receive interest and at times a quorum. Since being appointed, my attendance of monthly and supplemental workshops has been excellent, and even appointing a few of the Planning Commission's workshops. In 4 years, I've missed 2 meetings. My interest, engagement, as well as knowledge of local and federal transportation processes and funding has only increased. My role at Tampa Electric, which is to coordinate electric infrastructure for residential, commercial, and government projects, provides heightened awareness for development patterns and or projects of importance in Hillsborough County. Time served on this committee has affected new relationships and built trust with staff, committee members, and the Planning Commission. During my first appointment, I committed to regularly report out findings and discussions of the CAC. Thank you to Melissa Zornita and staff. I've been providing the Commission quarterly updates of the CAC's activities. Additionally, 2 years ago, our CAC Chairman, Bill Roberts, appointed me as Hillsborough County CAC representative on T-BARDA's CAC. There's been a lot accomplished in the MPO over the years. We now have Vision Zero, a robust complete streets program, adopted health and all policies. The county's updated the county's long-range transportation plan. We've seen the evolution of TBX to TB Next. And of course, we have the annual review of adoption of the Transportation Improvement Program. I view my role on the committee as a citizen of Hillsborough County who carefully weighs difficult and complex decisions facing our region. My experience over the past year serves the committee well, and I look forward to continuing serving as a Planning Commission's appointee. Thank you for your appreciation over the years, and I ask for your support and continue as your citizen advisory appointee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Now to vote on this, we have, Melissa, am I correct? We have 7 board members on the line right now. So we're gonna have to, my thought is if we do Melissa, I can't hear you.
Sorry. Yes,
Oh, sorry.
you do have.
Yeah, we have 7 board members. So if we do a roll call, my thought is we do a roll call vote and you say who your choice is, then we'll be able to see if somebody gets 4 of the 7. If no one gets 4 of the 7, we take the top 2 and it would redo it. That's kind of what I was thinking. Does that make sense?
I think that's fine. If you may want to have some discussion.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So before we do that, that's how we'll do the process. Any discussions, any questions or anything from any of our board members of the applicants before we vote? Commissioner Dix.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's worth noting, of course, that we've been extremely blessed to have 3 people step up to the plate and volunteer, when in times past we would go begging and hope for 1. And certainly all 3 of the applicants, as all of us have been able to read through their background and resume, they are all qualified and all have the public service interest at heart. And we particularly appreciate Rick's service. And I know that he would continue to do a fine job. However, I also want to say that I do know Dean Pfeffer, and I do know him to be not only a servant of God, because he serves as a reverend of the church, but he's very, very much the epitome of a public servant. He served on the YMCA board and any number of boards over in Plant City. And he's always dedicated and willing to do what is best for the community. And in that regard, I'm always delighted to be able to kind of seek new blood, sometimes serving on a commission or an advisory board, so we get different opinions. And I don't know exactly how you want to do this. I think you said just kind of do a round robin of votes, but if you needed the nomination, I would certainly be honored to nominate Dean Pfeffer.
Okay. Well, I'm actually thinking if we go through the roll call, we could just each of us say our vote, but let's have all discussion first. But thank you, Commissioner Dix, for your comments. Commissioner Powell?
I didn't have any comments. I was just getting ready to vote.
Okay. Do any of the other commissioners have any comments, questions? Okay. If not, like I said, my thought is I thought we'd just go through the roll call and you say who your choice is, and we'll see if somebody gets 4 of the 7 votes at first round. If not, we'll take the top 2 and we'll vote again, if that makes sense. Okay. Is the clerk's office ready to do the roll call vote?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. If you could just go through it. Once your name is called out, please state who your choice is.
All right. Thrower?
I'm going to go with Rick Richmond.
Bernstein?
I vote for Josephine Amato.
Cardenas?
Rick Richmond.
Dix?
Dean Pfeffer.
Green?
We can't hear you.
Commissioner Graham, can you hear us?
Let me see if I can unmute him.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 Okay. Rick Richmond, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Joseph?
Rick Richmond.
Cress?
Rick Richmond.
Powell?
Rick Richmond.
I see Rick Richmond has 6 votes, Ms. Amato has 1, and Mr. Pfeffer has 1.
I think we missed Michael Marino on the.
I didn't see Mr. Rick.
My vote was for Ms. Amato.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I didn't see Mr. Marino would come in. My apologies. So that's 2. That's 2 for Amato, 1 for Pfeffer, and 6 for Richmond.
So based on that, Rick Richmond is going to be, he got the vote. He had 6 of the, did we have 9 total, I believe?
Yes.
6 of the 9. So Rick Richmond will be our appointee again. Congratulations. And thank you to the other applicants. We appreciate you all applying. And it's great to have 3 qualified candidates to choose amongst. Thank you.
And I did want to mention that if those candidates are interested, I can pass their names on to the MPO if other vacancies arise with the Citizens Advisory Committee. Sometimes they have them in different spots, and they might be able to, since we had such great applicants, I'd love to see them be able to participate in some way.
Yep. Thank you, Melissa.
Sure.
We're going to move on to item number 4, the Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan briefings. The first one is Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Amendment 20-07 text amendment.
Hi, good afternoon, commissioners. Melissa Dickens, Planning Commission staff. I didn't get a chance to preview my screen so you can see the children's artwork behind me. This afternoon, I am presenting on Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Text Amendment CPA 20-07. That is the One Water chapter for the unincorporated Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan. This is a rather significant text update, and we are thrilled to be bringing this forward to you today. We're excited about it and excited to hear your feedback and your questions. This is something that has been in the works with our collaborative partners at Hillsborough County for over a year now, and we did reflect that partnership in using both logos in this presentation. I also specifically want to share and introduce that Kevin Moran, the Environmental Management Division Director, is here joining us today. He and his staff have been instrumental in helping to put this together. He does have a PE, but I think he also may qualify for an honorary AICP at this point. And I also want to give a big thank you to the entire One Water Working Group from different aspects of Hillsborough County who have helped us put this together. And this is a briefing today. The purpose is to get your comments and feedback on the draft, and no action is required.
Okay.
So this slide here, you can see on the right-hand side of the screen is our approach for how we plan on organizing, our approach for how we plan on organizing the various aspects of the comprehensive plan update. So these represent various chapters that we'll be bringing forward in phases, with One Water being the initial portion of the overall update. And One Water updates and combines the stormwater management, sanitary sewerage, and potable water elements that are currently in the adopted comprehensive plan. It also incorporates the water resources related language and maps from other elements in the adopted plan. And this One Water chapter will replace those elements and that language, and we will be providing a full strike-through underline as part of the public hearing. I wanted to share a little bit about the process that we went through in developing this and the innovation that the innovative approach that we took to this aspect of the plan update. First, I wanted to share that One Water is really considered to be on the forefront of water resources planning. It's something that's talked about at the national level as being incredibly innovative, looking at all aspects of water, how they're interrelated, and not considering them separately. So we're excited that this is probably one of the first comprehensive plan approaches that takes the One Water approach in the entire country. We've also set up the plan to reflect the interrelated nature of water. So again, recognizing that stormwater, wastewater, potable, the natural system, they're all interrelated and interconnected. So we've tried to weave that throughout the draft. And this plan also provides a framework for new initiatives that are being pursued by Hillsborough County, things like coordinated water resources planning, integrated water resources management, and green infrastructure. Again, developed collaboratively with their staff. We're excited about that specifically because this means this is not a plan that's going to sit on a shelf. It's something that we know can be implemented. It's something that our county partners want to see implemented. So we're really excited about the process and the partnership that we went through to get here. And then the other thing that I'll share is that the draft was shared with our local, state, and regional agencies. So folks like Tampa Bay Water, the Water Management District, and EPC have all had an opportunity to comment on the draft, and their feedback is incorporated. This slide here shows the overall goals for the One Water chapter. And you all can see the goals up on the screen here, so I won't read them each aloud, but I did want to share that these goals can essentially be categorized into a couple of different components. First, we have the components of the existing adopted Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan that we wanted to make sure to move forward. So the Hillsborough County Plan has a lot of good bones. There's a lot of good language in there, so we want to make sure that we weren't losing that language, particularly for things like protecting and preserving the water resources, especially those water resources that are used for potable water supply, also water conservation. Those things we wanted to make sure to move forward, along with making sure that we're providing infrastructure to the current and future residents. And then the other aspect of this is new, and that reflects both board direction and also programmatic plans for the county and their staff. So things like integrated water resource management, making sure that water resources planning is linked with land use planning to discourage sprawl and encourage redevelopment, making sure that things are sustainable in every sense of that word, fiscal, social, environmental, and then also innovative plans for the future like low impact development and green infrastructure. And within these goals, there are a few highlights of the sub-language that I wanted to share. First, as I mentioned, green infrastructure is in there for both the county and setting up a framework for how that might be pursued with the private sector. There's also some information on, or some language and policy direction on a septic to sewer program within the urban service area, so that we are, there's a phased approach to connect those folks. And coordinated water resources planning across departments is another main component, as well as setting up these water resources facilities so that they serve multiple functions. So perhaps there is a piece of property that during the wet season is a stormwater pond or stormwater infrastructure, but then during the dry season, it can be a recreational amenity. So those are the kind of concepts that you'll see within the language and are reflected within these 6 goals. I also wanted to make you all aware that we do have a couple of places where the public and stakeholders can find some additional information. We have a One Water project page, and on this page, the public has the ability to review the draft language, find some information about the process, find out when meetings are, and also submit comments and feedback on the draft. They can also sign up for any kind of virtual public meetings that we'll be holding. And we also have a One Water mapping application that is on this page that shows the different interrelationships between water. It shows how the resource is connected, and that's another way that we think helps tell the story of this approach to comprehensive planning. In terms of future steps, we have a lot going on this week. Tomorrow morning is the BOCC workshop on this item. And then later this week, we're also holding a virtual public meeting. This is something that we've planned for 6 p.m. on Thursday, where the public can register on our website and learn more about One Water and also provide comments and feedback. And then moving into August, we have the public hearings for both the Planning Commission and the BOCC, with the final adoption taking place in late October. And so this concludes the brief overview of the amendment today. I am available to answer any questions. Kevin Moran, again, is also available for questions, and we're looking forward to hearing your comments and feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Any questions from commissioners? Any questions from commissioners? Okay, doesn't
Just,
look like
just one point.
Commissioner Green?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say thank you to Melissa. This looks like a really good start with this effort, and I'm glad it's heading in this direction as a sort of a comprehensive approach to water in Hillsborough County. So thank you and others who worked on this with you. Good, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Green. Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Joseph here.
Okay, Commissioner Joseph.
Hi, Melissa. I just wanted to say that obviously I've been harassing you guys for a long time with this whole thing and working beside you with it. It looks great as it has throughout this whole process, but I did want to mention that I noticed the changes in the presentation, and I think it's really great the way you're piecing it apart and putting it back together to explain the whole cycle of how the process is about to work through for everyone. I noticed that image in there with a little puzzle piece in the 4 parts, and I just thought that was a really cool way to explain the bigger picture of what's coming before us here soon. So good job on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Joseph. Any other comments? Okay, thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to the second item, Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Amendment 19-09.
Good afternoon, Krista Kelly, Planning Commission staff.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I'm just trying to pull up the PowerPoint. I'm sorry, it just takes me a second. I'm sorry, we're having a little technical issue here.
Would you want us to move on to the next one and we can come back?
That is me as well.
Oh, okay. So.
I'm sorry, I'm getting some help, but for some reason it's not pulling up. see it now. Can you see it now?
I know we just see the desktop, I guess, the various files you have on your desktop.
That's what we hit. Control. Can you come here? I really apologize. It works in our practice.
Are you so you're 1909 and 2009? Are you 2010?
Yes, I'm 20. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
So
they're all, they have all the rest. Commissioner, why don't we see if the county's ready with their land development code briefing, and that would give them some time to get that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. So
Yeah.
let's do that. We'll jump on to item number 5.
Okay, thank you very much. We will resolve this.
Okay, that's fine. The first item is the accessory dwelling standards, 19-1055.
I think Yanika should be
Welcome.
we can't
Your
hear
sound isn't on.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Unica Mills, Planning Commission staff. I am here to introduce Mr. Israel Monsanto, who's from Hillsborough County Development Services Department, and he will be briefing you all today on the, it's actually the first round of land development code amendments for 2020. In my documents, you will see that I refer to the second round. I will correct that for the upcoming Planning Commission hearing for August. This is your opportunity today to give comments and feedback on the land development code amendments. There is no action required on your part today. Without further ado, Mr. Israel Monsanto.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Thank you. Israel Monsanto, Development Services. Just so you know, Mr. Tom Hisney is also here from Development Services Department. He worked extensively in one of the text amendments, so he will be available if you have any questions on the item 5H. And I will start sharing my screen. Oops. Commissioners, this is the first round of text amendments from the county. The first public hearing in front of the board will be on Thursday, July 23rd, and the second and final one will be on September 24th. This is a list of the 9 text amendments that we will go through today. The first one is the accessory dwelling. As you may remember, this was continued from last year's second round. Staff wanted to work on additional provisions, and in general, this is the purpose is to clarify the accessory dwelling provision of the Land Development Code. The provision will regulate by minimum lot size, which will be 7,000 square feet. Will allow accessory dwellings on legal non-conforming lots, and accessory dwellings will be permitted on front yards placed at twice the depth of the district front yard setback. And provisions will be added to not allow variances or this particular provision to be varied. Second text amendment is 200770. This is in relationship to the wastewater connection in the urban service area. The purpose is to require connection to a publicly owned and operated wastewater facility for the subdivision of a parent parcel or lot of record in the urban service area. This will only allow subdivision of a parent parcel in the urban service area if the newly created lot connects to a wastewater facility. We have exception today in the land development code for connection to public water and potable water, and this will remain in place. This is not being changed through these text amendments, only the wastewater connection. The next text amendment is related to public testimony by a party of record. The purpose is to allow public testimony by a party of record at the Board of County Commissioner land use meetings for rezoning applications without requiring party of record to file request for oral argument. Basically, this will permit a party of record to provide public testimony without first having to file request for oral argument with the county clerk. They still have to be a party of record to speak, but they won't require to request oral arguments to speak in front of the board. The next text amendment is related to the time limit to approve plan development districts and general site plans. The purpose is to establish a time limit once a plan development rezoning is approved by the Board of County Commissioners. There will be a time of 5 years after a plan development is approved by the board. Once that 5-year period has passed and there is no construction plans or plat approval for that plan development or portion of that plan development, the applicant will have to come back to the Board of County Commissioners to amend the PD specifically for those conditions related to transportation network and external access points. This will require a minor modification to the PD general site plan. This is similar to what the City of Tampa has for time limits once a rezoning is approved for a plan development. The next text amendment 200723 is related also to plan development site plans, but this is to require additional transportation information once an applicant is filing for a plan development. So there will be additional transportation in relationship to access, cross-access to the general roadway network around the proposed plan development. They will have to identify cross-access, connectivity opportunities to surrounding sites, and also parcels for proposed PD districts in context of the overall network of the area. If there is an applicant or developer who will not meet this or will not be able to provide this information, the applicant will have to include as part of the PD rezoning process a PD variation for design consistent with our code section 50306 for PD variations. They will have to respond to 4 design criteria, and that will be reviewed as part of the plan development rezoning process. The next text amendment is related, this one comes from transportation section, and this is to add or expand the number of roadways class from 5 to 6. These today, there are a total of 7 roadways classification, and the 7 is for local roads. But today the code only requires cross-access, application of cross-access requirements for classes 1 through 5. Transportation staff is adding class 6 to the requirements. This one is also coming from transportation section staff. And this is to allow additional alternative access connections, specifically for emergency access within plan development districts without requiring a rezoning modification. These will provide the same design standard for emergency access ways found today in the subdivision portion of the land development code. So basically, if there is a plan development that's zoned for residential, and there is it's found that an additional access is required for emergency purposes, the developer doesn't have to go back to change the PD. This will also apply for non-residential uses of an approved plan development. The next text amendment is related to backyard chickens, which will be maybe allowed on residentially zoned lots. This will permit chickens, a maximum of 5 hens allowed with no roosters allowed on parcels that are occupied by single family and 2-family homes. Chickens will be kept in closed coops at all times in the backyard. Restrictions on height and size of the coop are being proposed. On-site slaughtering and egg sales will be prohibited, and variances will not be allowed to change these requirements. And lastly, the last text amendments is it's the continuances of the public hearing provisions of the Land Development Code. These will allow the toll of the calculation of the 6 month time frame limit for an application to be heard at a public hearing in the event the public hearing is canceled by the county during that 6 month period. So basically, this will allow the pause of the calculation of the maximum 6 month period once a rezoning application or a public hearing application is filed due to county closure or canceling during emergency events like we are in these days. Once the public hearing is scheduled again, then the calculation of the time will resume at the next public hearing. And with that, that's the last text amendment, and they're available if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. To make it, I think it'll be a little bit more organized I'll just start at the number 1 and go through the land development code items. If there's questions related to that particular one, we'll start off with 19-1055, accessory dwelling standards. Any comments, questions on that specific one? I apologize. I probably should have stopped as we went through and just taken the questions as we went along, but we'll do it this way. That way, I think it's a little bit more organized. So any questions, comments on the first one, which is 19-1055, accessory dwelling standards?
Yeah, I have questions.
Okay, Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you maybe give me a little bit of a better understanding on where the square footages like come into place? Because to me, it just seems that like 900 square feet, is pretty small, and I think that there's going to be as we continue on in our county, especially for the need from affordable housing perspective, that people are going to need to move in older family members or children coming back from college may need like their own spaces, and so I can't imagine that 900 square feet is really going to be ideal for those. So I was wondering, just my first question is like, why those numbers?
All right. So the minimum size for the actual accessory dwelling is not being changed through this text amendment. So that will stay in place. Today we have provisions to allow that size to be larger, no more than 1,200 square feet. So 1,200 square feet of size to be increased through the variance process. Those provisions are not changing today through this text amendment. Only the minimum lot size that's going to be changed. The code today have the minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet. That's not going to change, but the thing is that we don't allow those accessory dwelling in RC 9 zone district because the minimum lot size for those are 5,000. But you have instances where you have an RC 9 lot which have 7,000 square feet or so. But again, we're not changing the minimum 900 square feet for the accessory dwelling. Now, is your general question why that number is on the code for the minimum 900 square feet?
Yes. Like was that just, was there some sort of metric that was like formulated on, or did someone just pluck that out of thin air like, 900 square feet sounds like a good number?
I am not sure where it came from. Maybe Tom, which has more time dealing with the text amendment, but I don't think I right now I cannot answer that question why the 900 square feet is listed.
Okay. Well, then maybe you can help me with my second question as it relates to someone being able to request a variance. I'm always leery when someone has they may be requested, and it doesn't seem like it's by right. It's just something that they may be able to do. And I've sat on the appeals board, and I've heard so many variances come through that board previous to my time on this board. And most of the time I found that variances aren't always really approved. So what is the threshold, or is there any additional criteria other than having a larger lot size Is that, the only thing that they need in order to kind of ensure that they can get that variance?
Well, there are a number of criteria that they have to have in order to go through the variance. You have to have the unique situation. It cannot be a self-imposed hardship. But in the case of the minimum size, as long as you have the minimum 7,000 square feet and you meet the other criteria for responding the variance, there is no, the threshold that I see, correct me if I'm wrong, if that is the question that you're asking. As long as you have the minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet, that's not going to change.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, in paragraph C, where it talks about increasing the dwelling size of the accessory dwelling unit, to 1,200 square feet. It says that the residential lot, is going to be at least 14,520, square feet. So in order to get to that 1,200 square feet, you have to have, that larger lot size, which is going to be, obviously it's double than the minimum. It's a little bit more than double than the minimum lot size. Yeah, you're not even really increasing the size of the accessory dwelling unit by the same, number there, but which kind of, weird to me, where the lot size has to go up by 50% or greater, but can't have 25% or more. It really isn't a big jump there, but my concern is just, in order to get to that 1,200 square foot, which that to me seems like a decent size for an accessory dwelling unit. If mom and dad or, kids are coming back from college and they need, to get another, want to all live, together, on the same parcel. That seems like it's about the average size of a 2-bedroom these days. At least is what I'm saying. So I just want to know how the, variances, is going to work. And is it going to be something that's going to be easier to be obtained versus, something that's going to be really hard and arduous? Because I see people come to those, I've been on the LUHO and it's just, people, think that they're going to be able to get a variance because the code says that they may be able to do this. And, I don't really like the word may. I wish it would be more something like, can or shall, something that's more, definitive, where it's not necessarily left up to, land use hearing officer or variance, a person who hears that in order to make a judgment call. Essentially, it's just more spelled out.
I see your concern. I don't know if Tom wants to add something to the question. But right now, what happens is that, and again, I understand your concern, but right now it's as long as the applicant meet those requirements, then they don't need the variance. Now, those are put there to ensure that someone can ask the variance as long as they meet those additional standards. It doesn't prevent them to ask for the variance, but again, I don't know the original rationale to have that 900 square feet minimum and then how now they can go to the 1,200 square feet, assuming they can meet the other standards.
Hello, Israel?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, and commissioners, this is Tom Hisney with Development Services staff. Unfortunately, I don't have visual capability to participate in the meeting because the platform doesn't allow you to access visually with a webcam, but I was involved in the years past with the various code amendments, including the accessory dwelling amendments. And so in response to your questions about how the size came about, for many years, the maximum size for an accessory dwelling was 600 square feet. Some years ago, some commissioners, we went through the process of amending the accessory dwelling regulations. Request was made to increase the size to 900 square feet. And although 900 square feet might seem small, it actually is quite adequate for the purposes of an accessory dwelling, because the point of the regulations is not to have two full-size single-family homes on the lot. It's to allow to have a secondary dwelling unit on the lot. So the 900 square foot was an increase from 600 square feet. And again, it was found or felt at the time that that dimension was adequate for, again, the purposes of having a secondary dwelling unit on the property. Also, at that time, an issue that we were facing is that even though the code allowed a 600 square foot maximum for an accessory dwelling, variances were being granted to increase that size to various sizes. And there were a number of cases where the size of the accessory dwelling unit matched or was, very, very close to the size of the primary dwelling unit, which again is not the intent of accessory dwelling regulation. We also looked at regulations from around the country and found that the 900 square feet was pretty typical. There's some jurisdictions that limited to 500 square feet back then. So that was the origins of the 900 square feet. And then the provision for a variance to increase it to potentially go to 1,200 square feet is hinged to the idea that the accessory dwelling, when you start getting larger than 900 square feet, needs to have a relationship with the size of the primary dwelling to ensure that indeed it remains a secondary dwelling unit. And so then that's where you find that the provisions, in addition to the minimum lot size, is also keyed to the floor space that's in the prime or living space in the primary dwelling unit. So those are the background that you're asking for on where those parts of the regulations came from. They've been in place for a number of years. Now, when it comes to the variance to increase the size of an accessory dwelling from between 900 and 1,200 square feet, in addition to meeting the relative size requirements, that variance then is reviewed under the same variance criteria that apply to all variances. So there's no special test. It's the same test that applies to all variances.
Just for my own self, other board members can, chime in, or anyone else. I just think that instead of having to, go through and request a variance to get to that, size, I think that it should just be, straight in the code that, hey, it's provided that you do have this, larger lot size, it's just something that you can just, get by right. I don't think that having to apply for a variance, and go through that process and having to take additional time and, money and all that stuff, I don't think that's, really right or fair, but that's my personal opinion. And that's it. All I had to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Powell. Any other comments concerning Land Development Code 19-1055? Okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Green? Yes.
Thank you. I just thank you, Tom, for clarifying that, because that was the nature of my question also, in terms of the size of accessory dwelling unit, or the permitted size, let's say. I do have a question about the 900 square, which seems, in my opinion, somewhat large. But yes, thank you for clarifying that. I'm of the opinion there should be both a minimum and a maximum size for accessory dwelling units. But again, this is just my experience with looking at other jurisdictions and how they legislated accessory dwelling units as well.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Green. Any other comments on this one?
Yeah, I would say I actually have one of those accessory units on my property, a 600 square foot one, and it's decent size for a one bedroom. I have it. My parents come to visit, so for them it's good size, but it couldn't be a long term stay. It's more like a temporary. Like if I wanted my parents to live with me, it would be kind of small for them in the long term. So that 900 makes sense. But I also think that to get that bump up, they shouldn't necessarily have to, go for a variance on that. Because if somebody's adding this to their property, it's because they can't afford to go buy another. They can't afford to buy it's out of need. It's because they're taking on another family member or something along those lines. So having to request a variance on that, I don't think should also be a requirement.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to any questions for item number 2, Land Development Code 20-0720, wastewater facility connection. Any comments, questions on that item? Okay, no comments on that item. Item number 3, which is public testimony by a party of record. It's 20-0721. Okay, nothing there. Item number 4 is Land Development Code 20-0722, recertification of a site plan. Any comments? Move on. Okay, Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess this is not currently in the code right now, correct? So if someone has entitlements that have been in place, those just run with the land and they don't expire. So two questions is, for those who already have existing approvals, will this be affecting those that have already had their approvals? Or is this only for new approved PDs?
Correct.
New. Okay. And then my second thing is that I guess on one hand, I can kind of understand why someone may, why we may think this is like a great idea. But I think that with our current economy and what's happening, like right now, I couldn't imagine if, it's not as bad as, the 2008 crash, but I know those are a lot of, entitlements and a lot of people spent a lot of money, back then to, entitlements, into properties. And then, the market just fell out and the real estate cycle, just totally shifted. And you never know when that's going to happen. And I think if that's taught us anything, is that obviously 5 years goes by, really fast. And I don't think it's wholly fair to cap it at 5 years. I could see maybe 10, because I don't think that, within 10 years, you'd be able to, economy, goes bad and you have time for that to, recoup, or maybe at least, like 7 years. But people sometimes spend hundreds of thousands of dollars going and, doing all of this work, and then, which is the nature of the, land development. So, that's on them, but I don't think it's right for someone to go spend, a couple $100,000 and then, okay, well, then, something happens such as COVID. No one foresaw this, happening. And then we don't know how that, or something else down the road, how that's going to affect, development. And then, I just don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. And so I'd like to, I don't know if we're going to have any further discussions on this, like down the road, but definitely, I don't think 5 years is nowhere, is too short of a time frame. It's going to be problematic.
Okay. Melissa, you got a comment?
I just wanted to mention that this is the whole reason that we do a briefing like this, is to get that kind of feedback. The county will be having a similar workshop with the BOCC tomorrow morning, and then they'll synthesize all of that feedback and be back before us next month with the consistency findings. So the language may change between now and then based on the feedback they receive.
Okay. Well, hopefully they know my feedback, and I don't think it's good.
Okay, Commissioner Powell, any other comments on 20-0722? Okay, no additional comments. We're going to move on to item number 5, Land Development Code 20-0723, transportation information for PD site plans. Any comments? Okay, no
Mr.
comments
Chair,
there.
Commissioner Joseph, I had a question actually.
Okay, Commissioner Joseph, go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Monsanto. In the paperwork that was submitted for this, it said that the purpose was to gather more information on the PD submittals. And I was just wondering, beyond that, what's development services need for that information? Is my first question. Like, what's the necessity? Obviously, there's a necessity, but like, what was the I guess the light bulb that came on and you guys said, okay, hey, we don't have something that we need to try and get it in here. So what drove that need for that information at this time? And my second question is, what input have you gotten, if any, because obviously it's still pretty early, from the development community on this?
Right, so thanks for the questions. So for the first one, transportation staff and development services staff found that applicants would submit plan development plans for review for rezonings, and there would be, when you look at those plans in the context of the area where the rezoning was being proposed, there were opportunities to connect and provide roadways, connections, and access depending on the surrounding road network. And those opportunities were being missed because they were not shown or provided by applicants. And through the rezoning process and the review process of those plan development plans, staff would meet with the applicants and start the conversation as to there are some logic needed, or there is some opportunities here that the area calls for to provide those connections that are not being shown. And we always ask the applicants to provide justifications, and it was a question and answer and providing information so staff would evaluate, and that went and was carried over to the board, and then the board had to make some decisions based on what the staff provided and what the developers were proposing, or just their justifications. So the intent of this text amendment is to revisit those requirements, which, by the way, we have current transportation requirements in the Land Development Code for site reviews that you are required to provide connections based on what's surrounding you, what type of roads you have around it, and how many connections that you should provide. So basically, transportation staff is taking those requirements from site reviews and put it in the plan development rezoning process, and requiring those type of information, transportation information, to be on the earliest stage of the rezoning process, go through that process, and then get approved by the board, and then it's already in place, instead of waiting to go to the site review and then start asking why this is not being provided here, where there is a logic, there is an intersection here, for example, that would call for that connection to happen there logically, but it wasn't shown on the PD plan. And so again, in general, that's the intent, is to just require the applicant through the rezoning process, which is the earliest stage, to show those opportunities in the overall context to be required through the PD rezoning process and be shown on the PD plans. And the second question, we're in the earlier stages of this text amendment. So we are going to get feedback as we move. These text amendments were recently uploaded in our website, and there's going to be an email sent to developers and stakeholders this same week. So we will going to start hearing from them about these text amendments. So you should be hearing those soon.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the answer and the point that you made in your answer was very excellent, and it's what I assumed it was, but I think it should be stated clearly here in a public forum. Obviously, I think we might get some differing opinions as we go forward from differing folks, but I think the focus is clear, and I look forward to hearing what everyone else thinks as we go forward. Thank you for the explanation.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other comment? Commissioner Dickinson?
Hi, this is Amber. So I have a quick question. So on PDs that require school sites, would this be an appropriate area to modify in order to ensure that the transportation methodology used for those school sites, which is a little different than the transportation methodology used for just regular development, is incorporated at the front end versus the back end of PDs? I say this because we run into issues where school sites are included in PDs and then they have a condition that they have to meet the ILA later, and then the school does their own methodology, transportation methodology study in order to have the school cited. But if it could all be rolled in at this stage and actually mentioned maybe in this amendment, maybe it doesn't need to be, but since it uses slightly different methodology, it was just a concern I wanted to bring up.
Thank you. I'll take notes.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments before we move on to the next one? Okay, moving on to item number 6, Land Development Code 20-0724, cross-access requirements. Any comments, questions? Okay, no comments. We'll move on to number 7, Land Development Code 20-0842, alternative emergency access connections. Okay, no comments on that. Number 8, Land Development Code 20-0855, allowance of chickens in residentially zoned districts. No comments. All right, we'll move on to Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah. Well, I have 2 little kids, so I could not imagine having to hear a bunch of chickens all of a sudden next door. So I don't think I saw anything in this amendment here that had any sort of idea to or a consideration for noise. So my family had a farm, and chickens make a whole lot of noise even when there's not a rooster, especially if there's some sort of predator, snake, or whatever. And so do we have any sort of thought process, or has that been, taken into the thought process here, like the noise?
Melissa, are you there?
Yeah, okay. Thanks for the question. I will have Tom. Tom is gonna go. Okay.
Yes, hi, Commissioners. Again, this is Tom Hisnay. Well, certainly with regards to roosters, that was the primary noise consideration. Those are prohibited. However, when it comes to like a general noise association with chickens, I think it's really a matter of where, if you're going to allow this use, then you're going to have some kind of associated impacts like that. I don't know how we would be able to effectively try to impose general noise that's created by chickens.
I mean, it just seems so problematic to me to, been quiet use and enjoyment of your, of your home, and then all of a sudden, you have just all of a sudden a new layer that's going to be, thrown in. It's one thing to, people have pets and things like that you have to deal with, and now we have to worry about chickens. Just sorry.
Okay. Any other comments on this one? We'll move on to the last Land Development Code 20-0856.
I actually have a comment. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right.
I was looking through it. Is there any type of minimum lot size associated with it? Just because I think that could provide a an alternative in the context of if they are pretty loud. Well, if it's on a minimum lot size, well, they can be placed in a certain area.
Okay.
No, sir. The regulation as drafted does not include minimum lot.
Can everybody turn off their microphones, please? We've got some feedback.
Yes, sir. Again, this is Tom Hisney. No, that as drafted, it does not include any minimum lot size requirements.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Any other comments before we move on? We'll move on to item number 9, Land Development Code 20-0856, 6-month time frame calculation for public hearing applications. Any comments, questions? Okay.
Commissioner,
Yes, Melissa.
I just wanted to mention, I misspoke. These items are coming back to your August meeting for a consistency finding, not next month.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Melissa, quick question. Is Christine ready to go back to her items, or are we going to just continue on at this point?
Yes, I think that Krista's ready for us to go back to item number 2 on the briefing for the plan amendments.
Okay, we'll go back to Crystal. So we're going to go back to item 4.2, Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Amendment 19-09, Future Land Use Map Amendment.
See the presentation.
Yeah, Krista, we don't hear you yet. Krista, you there?
Okay, I'm here.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
We
Thank
see
you
the
for your
screen too. We've got the map up, or the presentation up.
Excellent. I'm presenting today 1909. This is
Can you speak up a little bit? We can barely hear you.
They can't hear me.
Yeah, we can barely hear you.
They can barely hear me. I'm sorry, 1 second. Oh, there we go. Now, is that better?
Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your patience. I'm presenting a privately initiated map amendment, comprehensive plan amendment 1909. This is a site northwest of Boy Scout Road and Grove Lane. This site is located in the rural area in the northwest portion of the county. It's within the Keystone Odessa Community Plan boundary. The major roads that serve this site are Boy Scout Road, which it fronts on the west side, Racetrack Road, Tarpon Springs Road, and Gun Highway. This is an aerial of the site. As you can see, it's a little triangular slice of land. It's adjacent to rural residential home sites, farms, orchards. The site does have one home on the site.
Krista, let me interrupt a second. Melissa, do you see the narrative on the screen? It looks like, I just want anyone watching to not be confused. It's referring to 1906. So I just want to make sure the public's not confused by that.
There's narrative on the screen?
There's
the notes on the side. I don't know if there's a way to change the display settings at the top, not show the notes.
Okay, I'm getting assistance.
Yeah, it's referring to 1906. I don't want the public to be confused.
Yeah, it's wherever the presenter. I apologize, each computer has a different setting, so. I don't know how to turn it off. It's right there.
The display settings right next to it where it says you were just over show taskbar. I think note to the left there. See if it Okay, well, let's keep moving forward so we don't delay the meeting, but yes, the information on the side is not,
Yeah, please disregard that. Just look at the one slide that she's,
yeah.
Okay.
yeah, you can continue.
Okay, thank you. No, it's not. The adopted future land use map shows the site currently designated agricultural rural, 1 unit per 5 acres. As you can see, the surrounding area also reflects that designation. To the south, there is agricultural estates, 1 unit per 2.5 acres. The applicant's requesting a change to residential estate, 1 unit per 2.5 acres, similar to the site south of it. The impact of this change on this 5-acre tract, currently 1 dwelling unit is permitted. The increase would be 2 dwelling units on the same site. The site does not meet locational criteria unless a waiver were granted, at which point the floor area ratio would be increased from 0.25 to, or I'm sorry, it would remain 0.25. And this is a briefing. No action is needed at this time. And so that concludes that presentation. Okay.
Turn my mic off. Sorry about that. Any comments, questions from commissioners before we move on to the next one? Any comments on Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Amendment 19-09? Okay. No comments. We'll move on to 20-09, text amendment.
Okay. Thank you. Again, this is Krista Kelly, Planning Commission staff, presenting Comprehensive Plan 2009. This is a text amendment to the housing element of the comprehensive plan. It deals with affordable housing density bonuses. It's a privately initiated amendment, and it proposes to modify text in the housing element as it relates to the housing, the affordable housing density bonus. Specifically, this text amendment adds provisions for the Residential Plan 2 and the Waimama Village Residential 2 land use categories. It adds these land use categories as qualifying for affordable housing density bonuses. It would allow an addition of 2 dwelling units if criteria were met. To qualify for the density bonus, at least 15% of the total dwelling units must be reserved for low or very low income housing, and at least 15% of the total dwelling units must be reserved for moderate income households. Projects in the RP2 and WVR2 would be eligible for the bonus if the following criteria were met. It must meet the minimum size for the planned village, which is 160 acres. The site must be within those 2 land use categories. The developer must provide public water and sewer, and public, private, or nonprofit transit services must be available within 1 mile of the project site. This amendment was distributed for agency comment. At this time, we received a comment from Development Services, which is the umbrella agency that coordinates the review with other local agencies. Basically, in regards to strategic infrastructure, the application as submitted does not have sufficient information for this department to review the impacts on public facilities. In terms of zoning, the proposed change for the housing element is not sufficient for review at this moment. In addition to this text amendment and running concurrently, the board directed land use studies of the RP2 or Residential Plan 2 and Waimoma Village Residential 2 land use categories, which is ongoing, and the county is seeking community input. This is just an overview of this text amendment as a briefing, and this concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions from commissioners? Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This actually came up earlier today in the Affordable Housing Board meeting, and I was going to kind of give an update about that at our meeting this evening, but there was a report that the Schimberg Center presented to us, and just briefly, the biggest need that we really have right now, in the county is for those that are going to be 50% of AMI or below. And right now, we have a housing shortage for that income bracket of just over 54,000 units. That's the biggest need and right now the biggest shortfall. And then when you go up, to the next bracket is going to be those between 50 and 80%, where we've got a little less than 23,000 units, that we're short. That we need. So, combined, we're, around, 77,000-ish, units that we need. So, for other commissioners who are, maybe not up to speed on what's happening, in the affordable housing sector, I mean, I personally think that this is a really good, amendment. Really might need, some other tweaks, but it's definitely something that I think is going to be really, beneficial, for everybody as it relates to that. I did have another question though, and maybe this might be better for Melissa. With the current comp plan, I couldn't find any sort of incentives that are in the land development code, for for those moderate income, levels, for either like workforce housing, or I know we don't have attainable housing officially in the code just yet, but I'm sure it'll be there pretty soon. So. Am I wrong in that we don't have any sort of like density bonuses or development incentives for like developers for those right now, or did I just overlook that and I'm an idiot?
No, you're not. That is correct. The current density bonuses and direction outlined in the comprehensive plan and the land development code is for affordable housing and defined as such. It has the definition has never been broadened to cover attainable or workforce housing, as the focus from the county has been on those that meet that affordable definition. So that is what this private applicant is seeking to do, is to as one part of this is to expand that definition.
Okay. And will this have any, I don't know if it's like credits or, how is this going to help like with transit, as well? Does that have a component?
Well, the current density bonus requires that they be within a mile of a transit line. Certainly one of the things that staff has identified in review of this is that the two categories that are being added to the density bonus table are outside the urban service area. The Waimoma Village Residential and the RP2 categories are right now in the rural service area and are not served by transit.
Okay.
Well, I shouldn't say not at all, but there's limited opportunities. I don't know how much of those categories would be within a mile of the transit lines.
So is this something that like Hart has seen, or they've had any like comment, on this?
This
Krista,
has been,
yeah.
Yeah, they are on the distribution list. Sometimes we do receive comments a little bit after the briefing, so anything we get, we will include in the final packet.
Okay, all right, because I mean, just to me, this seems like this is the type of amendment that would, or correct me if I'm wrong, like it would incentivize developers to, want to do more, affordable housing, projects and seek those out. So it's just, correct me if I'm wrong, but would that be the case?
Yes, we have seen some the existing density bonus allows for the categories that are inside the urban service area, them to go up to the category above them. So from if you're Res 6, you can go up to Res 9. I would say we've seen some limited applicability of that. I think a lot of what we have heard is that there are sometimes challenges going above certain density thresholds, and that changes the type of development and the product that they're seeking to provide.
Okay, Krista, you mentioned about the county and the two studies. I think if I recall, one's being done by Kimley Horn, and I think they're doing are they doing the RP2
yes.
Study? Have they taken a look? Either both of those companies, have they taken a look at this, amendment and kind of incorporate it into their scope and part of their study at all?
In terms of, they are aware of this amendment. There has been coordination and discussions. I cannot speak to whether they have incorporated it into the scope, but there are definitely some overlap in the topics that we're in continued discussions about.
Yeah, okay. I think in the, I believe our intent in next Monday, you'll actually have a workshop on those two studies and where the recommendations are coming from on those. And so you'll see that in the Waimama area, there's been some incorporation of some affordable housing and workforce housing. The RP2 area, I don't believe that's something we've heard as much of a sentiment about from the community. And so in this next series of stakeholder their virtual work sessions they're going to be having, I think there will be some questions about whether or not that's something that community is interested in having some incentive for.
For the two studies, was that something that the Planning Commission approved, or was that something that the BOCC had to approve? Because I was just curious if we could maybe ask the consultants to kind of weigh in, not force them. That's not what I'm trying to get at, but it would be great if they could, kind of put this proposal or keep it a part of their mind. So then that way, as they're doing their studies, they can kind of, give some guidance, to how this amendment would affect their study. I don't know how we get that done, but
yeah, I think that's to some degree what we've been trying to coordinate is if if this meshes with what they're hearing from the community, then certainly it would be a lot simpler to have these have it incorporated in those efforts as opposed to running as if it is competing with those. So I think that's something, that's why we've coordinated a meeting that I think was held last week between the consultants on both projects and the applicant on this plan amendment.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on this item, the 20-09 affordable housing density bonus? Okay. We'll move on to Hillsborough County Comprehensive Plan Amendment 20-10, Future Land Use Map Amendment.
we can't hear you, Will. You're muted.
Yeah, Will, we can't hear.
All right, here we go.
We can hear you now.
All right. Are you able to see my PowerPoint?
No, we cannot.
It must be showing on a different screen. Do you have two screens?
I do.
Pull it over. See if you can pull it over onto the one that has the lake on it. There we go.
We see it now. Piccadilly.
Can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Will Augustine, Planning Commission staff. The next agenda briefing item before you is Hillsborough County's Comprehensive Plan Amendment 2010. Comprehensive Plan Amendment 2010 is located in northwest Hillsborough County, along North Dale Mabry Highway, just south of West Fletcher Avenue. It is located within the urban service area. The subject site of the plan amendment is a privately initiated map amendment in northwest Hillsborough County, which is approximately 4.75 acres in size. The aerial shows that the surrounding area is predominantly single-family homes. The land use of residential 4 and residential 12 predominate the area. The subject property is south of West Fletcher, North Dale Mabry Highway intersection. Gun Highway and Limeball Avenue is to the southwest. North Armenia Avenue is to the east. The subject site has the adopted residential 4, residential 12, and office commercial 20 land use classifications. The large public, quasi-public parcel immediately to the southeast is Carrollwood Elementary School. The areas along North Dale Mabry Highway is a mixture of office, commercial, and multifamily uses. Residential 4, residential 12, and office commercial 20 are the predominant land uses of the surrounding properties. The applicant is requesting an office commercial 20 land use change. The currently adopted land use classification of residential 4, residential 12, and office commercial 20 allows a maximum of 64 dwelling units on the 4.75 acre site. For residential 4, suburban scale neighborhood commercial, office, or multi-purpose projects are limited to a build out of 7,198 square feet, which is a floor area ratio of 0.25. For residential 12, suburban scale neighborhood commercial, office, or multi-purpose projects are limited to a build out of 55,865 square feet, which is a floor area ratio of 0.50. For office commercial 20, suburban scale neighborhood commercial, office, or multi-purpose projects are limited to a build out of 51,888 square feet, which is a floor area ratio of 0.75. Total adopted build out potential is 114,880 square feet. With a land use change to office commercial 20, the subject site would have a potential build out of up to 95 dwelling units. Suburban scale neighborhood commercial, office, or multi-purpose projects are limited to a build out of 144,374 square feet, which is a floor area ratio of 0.75. And that concludes my presentation.
Sorry about that. My mic was off. Any questions, comments from anyone? Any questions, comments from commissioners on Hillsborough Comprehensive Plan Amendment 20-10? Okay, thank you. We will move back to item number 6 on our agenda, which is a briefing on concentrations of poverty. Terry, we can see you.
Yeah, my screen froze for a second.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm Terry again. I'll be presenting on the concentrations of poverty for 1970-2018. And at the conclusion of the presentation, I was asked to give you a preview of a new data and analysis tool. So at the end, if the slides change a little bit, it's intentional. We're transitioning to a new topic. But here's the presentation. This is an update to a presentation we did 2 years ago when it was concentrations of poverty, 1970 to 2016. So we have new census data to analyze to bring the analysis a little bit more current. So what is poverty? So there's 3 things we look at when we're analyzing poverty. It's poverty thresholds, poverty guidelines, and what's called the ratio of income to poverty. The poverty thresholds are a 48-cell matrix that gets updated annually. The matrix is applied nationwide. It doesn't take into account any type of local conditions. It's strictly a one-size-fits-all. So in this table, if you look at 4 people on the left-hand side, and then add in 2 of those members of the household or children, that would be your poverty threshold. So any income below that would put you into poverty. The poverty guidelines are a streamlined analysis or overview used for administering different types of federal programs. Very simplified. You just kind of look up the matrix. You see on this one, it's a little bit newer, 2020, 4 people in a family, it's 26,200. And that's where you land in poverty for this analysis. And then the ratio of income to poverty. This has gotten a lot of discussion in the press. Primarily about 2 or 3 years ago, a book came out called, I think it was Getting By on $2 a Day, which analyzed poverty trends across the country using a statistical tool called the Current Population Survey. And the authors of it was a book, and with some reports as well, identified a group of households that are getting by in what they call extreme poverty, people whose average income was around $2 a day. And when that book came out and the headline started discussing the book and whether it was accurate or inaccurate, there was a lot of information coming out about how poverty is calculated. And one of the things that I came across in researching that was poverty at the neighborhood level. So the genesis of this book came about looking at how Hillsborough County measured up or didn't measure up to other counties and MCAs, metropolitan statistical areas in the United States. And to do that, you need a couple of different tools. One is you need census tracts, which the census prepares every year. The census tracts can be refined, split. Very rarely are they consolidated, but they have a set population threshold. And they're good for 10 years of time. Since we're doing a longitudinal analysis, there was a new database that came on out of Brown University where they were able to manipulate the data, transpose some of the values, and generate data from 1970 through 2000 into 2010 census tracts. And by doing that, that gave us the ability to do a longitudinal analysis to see how population and poverty has changed spatially over time. And so what we're looking at are census tracts as surrogates for neighborhoods and looking at tracts where 40% or more of residents are poor. In the literature where they talk about concentrations of poverty, it's always 40% or more of the residents are poor. So that was our methodology as well. And so what we were trying to determine and validate was there a dispersion from city centers and or downtowns into suburban areas? This encroachment of the suburbs, is it happening? And when did the trend begin? And so we did an analysis. This is the 1970 analysis. And you can see, except for Plant City over here, and this is the only time Plant City appears in the analysis, almost all the census tracts are in South Tampa. And you have, it pops up here for Harbor Island, West Tampa, over to the University of Tampa area, and then over through Ybor City and north. And then in 1980, it becomes much more compact. You still have one tract neighborhood up here, which I believe there was some type of housing assistance located there. But similarly, downtown appears for a little bit. Once again, Ybor City, West Tampa. And then when we get into 1990, same thing. It's still very concentrated. We're not seeing any changes, any spatial dispersion. And then when we get to the year 2000, we have a booming economy. So we have even less tracts. The ones we do have are still pretty much concentrated here. And then when we get into 2010, the spatial pattern matches what was expected, what was being discussed in the literature of a decentralization away from downtown. As you can see here, here are the downtown tracts up towards the university area. And the tracts that have a red, that means that the values associated with them have a very high margin of error. So these could be false positives. They still light up, but we don't really trust them. And then for the most recent data for 2014 to 2018, you can see that many of those tracts have disappeared. And we still have some tracts up here throughout the university, throughout downtown. Here's the inset, tract 43 in West Tampa. That's most likely going to be a false positive because a lot of the housing in that area has been torn down. But you can see a expansion into unincorporated Hillsborough County here and up here as well. And so that's what we've seen in terms of the spatial dispersion of the concentrations of poverty. And that is it for that component of the presentation. I wanted to pause and see if there are any questions before I show you this tool for permit analysis.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from commissioners on this item? Okay, thank you, Terry. You can go ahead.
Okay. So this is a new tool that we've developed here at the Planning Commission. We track residential and commercial permit activity every quarter. We process it and analyze it. We publish spreadsheets. We use it for mapping, all sorts of different purposes this permit data is harnessed for. And this is a new tool, a dashboard of this permit data. Because when we process the permits, we add lots of different attributes to it, things like planning area, census tract, it's geocoded, we have dates, we know the jurisdictions. So here, if someone who is doing research on development in an area, they can select a jurisdiction, the screen will change, and then they can further refine their search by the types of permits. So if they wanted to know what apartments were in the city of Tampa that have been permitted, and then they can further refine it through a custom data time series analysis. So I can set November 28th to June 10th. And once you select it, let me see, it should give you a retrieve a field. Whoops. And there they are. And then once you click on it, it has the actual raw information associated with that permit. So you can see, the number of units, who pulled it, a little description, whatever data we receive from the issuing jurisdiction. So the 4 jurisdictions in Hillsborough County, we get that data, we scrub it, we have a template, we assign the template to all the permit data, and we try to retain as much of their metadata as possible. And then if someone wanted to just get reports on a jurisdiction, they can click on one of these tabs at the bottom, and it gives you a breakdown of permit activity by jurisdiction, by quarter, by planning area. Planning area is strictly for unincorporated Hillsborough County, area-wide. So there's a little overview, and it tells you if it's down or up from the preceding year, and then the different jurisdictions have their own tab. And up at the top where it says last updated, that gives you an idea of where we are in the processing. So we'll update this again sometime in late July or early August once the next quarter's worth of permits are supplied to us and they've been processed. And that's it.
Any questions from commissioners? Terry, I do have a question. What you may have mentioned, that second program you just showed, what program? What is the name of that?
It's a residential permits database.
Okay. Any questions, comments from commissioners before we move on? I thought a great presentation, very interesting information. Are other communities or like Temple Terrace or Hillsborough County, any other agencies asking for this information, or are you working with others with this information? School board, things of that nature?
For the permit data?
No, for the poverty information.
Yes. So there's a Councilman Bill Carlson at the City of Tampa who's very interested in it and has been asking for that information. As we make it available, I think more people are going to be interested in it and can use it.
Okay. And is that something that the other, can the public get access to this, or is this direct access to it in any way?
Yes, I turned that report that everybody got a copy of the Concentration of Poverty report. It's actually also exists in what's called a story map, and it's on our website. So all the maps that you see in the report they're live on the website, and you can interact with them. And there's additional data as well, such as eviction rate filings, things such as that you can't really put into a print resource, but can be leveraged in an online environment and used.
Okay, great information. Thank you, Terry.
Okay. Thanks.
Moving on to item number 7, the Briefing City of Temple Terrace plan amendments. Afternoon, Mark.
Good afternoon, commissioners.
I like your tie.
Thank you. Trying to bring up my PowerPoint here. Commissioners, can everyone see my screen?
Not yet. We just see you.
Okay. I'm afraid I don't see I hit share my screen. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We see you, not the screen yet. If you'd like, we could see if the Plant City amendments are ready. We could move on to that and give you a little bit of time.
That is mine as well, unfortunately.
Oh, yep.
Mhm.
Mark, try unsharing your screen and then resharing your screen.
I don't see the box to actually unclick that, Lionel.
It's the orange box with the white arrow. If you go down 3 spaces, the microphone, the camera, and then there should be a screen.
One more time, Lionel.
If you see the orange box that has the little white arrow, go down 3 icons. The first one will be a microphone. Second will be the video camera. Third will be a box where you can share your screen. Look at your bottom, or also at the bottom of your screen, if you click on the blue snowflake.
If it would be helpful, I think I can share it on my screen, and then you just talk through it, Mark.
If that would work, I'm afraid I just don't see the box that Lionel's referring to.
Okay, Melissa, you're presenter now. You can share your screen.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, do you see? Hold on. No. You got to make sure you're seeing the right screen, though.
I'm seeing the proper first slide on my screen. Well,
Okay.
what I did.
Okay, now you see it. Okay, great.
And I guess I'll need to ask you to advance the slides.
Yep. Which I think I just did.
Yeah, you did. It's
Yes.
on.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Mark Hudson, Planning Commission staff. Hopefully we can overcome these slight technical difficulties. For the city of Temple Terrace, we are processing one plan amendment, TTCPA 2002. The slide that you see before you right now shows you the general location of that, which is just south of Temple Terrace Highway, just east of North 78th Street. If I could have the next slide, Melissa. This is an aerial of the site. You can see the area that's affected with the dashed lavender line. To the top of your screen is Temple Terrace Highway. It, of course, is on the east side of North 78th Street. If I could have the next slide, Melissa.
Just seems a little delayed. There we go.
By way of a little bit of background, this is privately initiated and it is small scale. It is only coming in at 3 acres. The current land use on the site is residential 9, and the applicant has requested residential 18. They're also in the process of doing a planned development zoning district. Their interest is to develop the property with townhomes. If I could have the next slide. This shows you the land use as it stands today. Of course, the area that is affected is surrounded by the dashed black line. Again, it's just south of Temple Terrace Highway, just to the east of North 78th Street. To the north is areas in unincorporated Hillsborough County, which has a land use designation of residential 12. To the east and south, that is within the city of Temple Terrace. and that currently has a plan category of residential 18, which is also the plan category that's being requested by the applicant. Across North 78th Street on the west side, there is a neighborhood named Temple Park that is an unincorporated county and has a land use designation of residential 9. If I could have the next slide, Melissa.
Yeah.
This would show you the map, the adopted future land use map. If this plan amendment was approved by Temple Terrace City Council, would have the brown color of the designation of Temple Terrace Residential 18, similar to what you see to the east and to the south today. If I could have the next slide. This shows you the potential impacts if this plan amendment was approved. Currently, it has entitlements for 27 dwelling units. If this plan amendment was approved, that would increase to 54 dwelling units. So it would be a more dense development pattern that would be allowed along this segment of North 78th Street. Next slide. This plan amendment is scheduled to come before you for your consideration on July 13th. And being a small scale plan amendment, it is tentatively scheduled to be heard by Temple Terrace City Council on August 18th for their action. And with the next slide, that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Any questions from commissioners on this item? Okay, no questions. We're going to move on to agenda item 8, which is city plan amendments.
It's going to take me just a minute to download that presentation.
Yes, this is 4 plan amendments. While that's being downloaded by Melissa, we are processing 4 plan amendments for the City of Plant City this cycle, 3 map amendments and 1 text amendment.
Okay, so we need to go to, there we go.
That's it.
You see it? Okay.
I do.
Great.
As I mentioned previously, these are we're briefing you today on 4 plan amendments, 3 text and, 3 map and 1 text. The first 2 plan amendments, both the text and the map, relate to the redevelopment or the development of the Walden Lake Golf Course, which has closed, and the applicant has proposed a new village town center for that community. By way of a little bit of background for the text amendment, it's been privately initiated. It's a small scale text amendment because it's relation to a small scale map amendment, which I'll talk about in a moment. The applicant has developed language that they're proposing to add to the Imagine 2040 Plant City Comprehensive Plan to allow for the consideration of a village town center at the location that they are seeking within Walden Lake. If I could have the next slide. A little bit of some of the parameters to this. Obviously, the language that is included in the briefing is more complete than this, but I just wanted to give you some highlights. The Village Town Center would have a maximum size of 10 acres based on the proposed text amendment. It would be classified generally urban in intensity and density. They're requesting a 0.9 floor area ratio. It does allow for the consideration of some neighborhood commercial office uses if they're vertically integrated within a building that also contains multifamily. The neighborhood commercial office uses would be limited to no more than 20,000 square feet. I could have the next slide. Now I'm going to go into the map, the corresponding map amendment to give you a little idea of where the applicant is proposing to apply this new land use plan category if it was approved by the Plant City Commission. Generally, it's located in Walden Lake, north of Clubhouse Drive, west of Masters Way and Wedgewood Drive, and south and east of Sydney Row. You can see the location there with the star on the Plant City Vision map. This would be PCCPA 2002. The corresponding text amendment was PCCPA 2001. If I could have the next slide, Melissa. This is shows you an aerial of the area that the applicant has applied for. Of course, as I mentioned previously, the clubhouse and the corresponding golf course has been closed for some time. There is a corresponding plan development rezoning that's being proposed to develop some of the other areas within the West Golf Course within Walden Lake, but the area that's being affected that requires a land use change is shown in the dashed lavender line. You can see some of the area that's been developed out currently within Walden Lake, showing some of the neighborhoods that surround this area. The existing clubhouse, which is scheduled for removal, is just south of that. To the north, across the CSX railroad tracks, where there is no access to this site, is an industrial area. And if you went a little bit further north off the aerial, you would actually see Plant City Airport. But this shows the general proposal of the applicant for this new site. By way of a little bit of background, I've already mentioned it's privately initiated. It is small scale, coming in at 9.9 acres. Its current land use is residential 6. Of course, the applicant is proposing the new plan category that they developed called Village Town Center. I got the next slide. This shows you the land use map as it stands today. You can see the yellow color of the Plant City Residential 6, which basically is applied to all of Walden Lake that is shown on this particular slide. And you see the industrial park that is north of the CS railroad tracks. As I mentioned, there are some proposals to develop some of the other areas that will have to be considered by both the Plant City Planning Board and the Plant City Commission. But the area that will be presented to you to get your recommendation on it at a scheduled public hearing is the area that is surrounded by the dashed black line. And this shows you just the change of the lavender color if that Village Town Center was approved ultimately by the City Commission. Now, what is the potential development if this was allowed to occur? Currently, with residential 6 plan category, it would allow 59 units. The new proposal is for a 0.9 FAR, which that would equate to almost 400,000 square feet of multifamily uses. By using 1,000 square feet as a general guideline for a typical apartment, that would come out to about 378 dwelling units. There could be apartments smaller or larger, but that was just to give you a general idea of how many units theoretically could be allowed there. I do know that I have seen some initial, the initial plan development zoning modification has been applied to the city. And as part of that, they're actually requesting 260 units. But we're analyzing it based on its maximum build-out potential here. Also, as I mentioned, there's an opportunity for neighborhood commercial office. The maximum would be 20,000 square feet, and the minimum required to garner that land use category would be 10,000 square feet. And this is typically where I share with you the schedule for the plan amendment, when you can expect to hear this and to contemplate it and to make your recommendation. The city administration has an interest in having the plan amendment and the corresponding modification to the plan development zoning district heard concurrently, particularly by their planning board and by the commission ultimately. So we are waiting for direction from them as far as the ultimate schedule for both of these plan amendments. And once we do, we will schedule them and provide for adjacent proper owner notification for everyone within 250 feet, and also to the homeowner association. And that typically is supplied to the surrounding neighborhoods 30 days in advance of the first public hearing, in this case, the planning board. One thing that the commissioners, you can supply some additional feedback to the executive director and myself is we expect a great deal of interest from the local community in this application, and also for their opportunity to participate. We've already received some comments and we expect to receive a lot more. And over the next few weeks, I'd like to give both the executive director and myself some direction on how and where you might like to conduct this public hearing. We anticipate that our current commission chambers will not accommodate the number of people who we expect to be interested. particularly if we have to implement social distancing requirements. And you may have some thoughts, ideas of how we should conduct this hearing. I will say, historically, a facility that is served us well, that would allow us to hold a hearing that would allow for the social distancing and the participation that we anticipate. There is a facility called the Trinkle Center on the campus of HCC in Plant City. So that's one I would mention that you might want to consider, but there may be others that you would like us to take into account. And I believe I'm just available for any questions you have on these first two amendments.
Okay. Any questions or
The
comments?
next slide, Melissa.
Any questions or comments? Commissioner
Yes,
Green.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark, I had a couple of quick questions on this this last amendment. Village center. Now that will be a new land use category created by this amendment.
Correct. The applicant, Plant City currently has 15 land use categories. The applicant felt that none of those plant categories really met the need as far as providing a village town center within basically an existing built out community of Walden Lake. So they created one that they felt would fit within the character of the community. Obviously, our staff is going to be evaluating that to see if we concur with their position. But this would be a new plan category that would be applied to the map area that was shown on the previous slides.
Okay, and none of our mixed use categories sort of come close to what's needed here.
Not really. They've added a lot of provisions to try to limit particularly the neighborhood serving commercial uses to less intense uses than would typically be allowed in some of our other mixed use plan categories. For example, they have language in there that drive-throughs for food establishments would not be allowed. Certain types of businesses that generate a great deal of traffic would not be allowed. There tend to be less intense uses than most of our other plan categories, mixed use plan categories would contemplate. Also, the the requirements as far as being integrated vertically mixed use structure, that is not part of some of our other plan categories that we currently have in that palette of uses that we currently have available in Plant City. We have 15 plan categories in Plant City. I think the city of Tampa has, pushing 30. And I see as Plant City grows and becomes more complex, from time to time, there is a need to create a new plan category, and staff has done that on occasion. But in this case, this is being proposed by a private applicant.
Okay. My next question has to do with the amount of commercial space that's that meets the criteria for this proposed land use category. Is that spelled out anywhere? How does that work? I mean, would the applicant or ultimately the developer, would they be required to commit to a certain let's say square footage of commercial uses within this overall development? I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the way it's currently written is the maximum be 20,000 square feet. They would be required at a minimum to have 10,000 square feet. I believe that no single use can be more than 5,000 square feet. So that 10,000 square feet couldn't be consumed by a single use. Also, the neighborhood commercial uses would have to be integrated into a mixed use building, vertically integrated. So you couldn't have standalone commercial uses without being integrated into a multi-use building. Those are the general parameters that the applicant is proposing currently in the language.
Okay, but if I understand you correctly, then so someone could put the total 10,000 minimum required in one building.
It could be in one building with 4 separate uses, correct? Excuse me, 2 separate uses. That would be the minimum.
Okay. 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 All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Green. Any other questions concerning this item? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item.
The next plan amendment is PCCPA 2003. It's located up in the development known as Vieira. It's south of East Nice Griffin Road, west of Charlie Taylor Road, north of Midway Road, and east of Fraser Lane. And you can see it designated on the Plant City Vision map with a star, and located in the northeast area of the community. We have the next slide. This is an aerial of the site. The affected area is surrounded by the lavender dashed line. To the north is the lower Green Swamp Nature Preserve. To the south are areas that are already part of the Vieira development. And you can see some of the low density single family home and agricultural uses around this vicinity of Plant City and also in parts of unincorporated Hillsborough County. If I can have the next slide. By way of background, this is privately initiated. This is unlike the previous one. This is a regular scale plan amendment coming in at almost 90 acres. The applicant's requesting to go from mixed use residential commercial, residential for natural preservation to mixed use residential commercial. If I could have the next slide. Now to show you this map, one thing I wanted to point out is some of the area within the black dashed line already has the plan category that is being requested by the applicant. That area has never been properly defined either by a survey or a legal description. So by direction of the city attorney, we are looking to reestablish the borders with a proper survey and legal description. So that's why we are noting the change going from mixed use residential commercial R4 natural preservation to mixed use residential commercial, even though some of that area already has that plan category. You can see it's at the south west corner of Nice Griffin Road and Charlie Taylor Road. And this slide shows you basically, if this was approved, how that mixed use node would increase in size. By the way, what are the impacts? The existing development would allow 531 dwelling units, 164,000 square feet of commercial office uses, or some combination thereof. That would increase to 917 dwelling units and 408,000 square feet of neighborhood commercial office uses, or some combination thereof, if approved. Finally, this plan amendment and the next does have a defined timeline. We are expected to have a meeting with the planning board on June 24th. That will be a virtual meeting, and we are also placing on our website, like the city's, instructions how the adjacent property owners can participate in that discussion. The Planning Commission hearing is scheduled for July 13th. We have a transmittal hearing with the City Commission projected for August 10th. And if the city gives us direction to transmit this to the Department of Economic Opportunity, we expect it to come back and have a potential adoption hearing in October of 2020. And Commissioners, that concludes my presentation, and stand for any questions you may have.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners on this item? Okay, we'll move on. Oh, Commissioner Green.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, Mark, I do have one follow-up question on the previous town center, village center amendment. Real quick though, are there any open space requirements associated, or would there be open space criteria associated with this land use amendment?
Off the top of my head, I cannot recall. I cannot.
Community open space or community. Okay.
Off the top of my head, as far as this plan category, I don't recall any. There is, I think, requirements for community gathering spaces within the area, that the area has to be open to the public, can't be gated off. One thing to realize is the applicant does have control over other lands, and I think they're proposing open space in other areas of the project. Might not be predominantly within the village center itself. But when we do come back and present this to you, I'll be sure to call those out and highlight those requirements based on the language they provided.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the last item, 20-04.
Finally, the last plan amendment that we are processing is located north of Interstate 4, west of North Park Road, south of East Allen Road, and east of North Maryland Avenue. It's PCCPA 2004, and you can see on the vision map, it's just north of the major commercial activity center located at the interchange of Park Road and Interstate 4. This shows you the area of the site. Again, you can see East Sam Allen Road to the north, North Park Road to the east, and the site that's being affected is surrounded by the lavender dashed line. The one area that you may be familiar with if you travel on I-4 is a little bit further to the south on the northeast corner of the intersection of Park Road and Interstate 4 is Stingray Chevrolet, and that's pretty prominent in the arrow that you see before you. So this is just a bit north of that on the opposite side of North Park Road, or the west side of North Park Road. If I could have the next slide. This again is privately initiated. It's a regular scale plan amendment again, so it will be required to go to the Department of Economic Opportunities for review. It's 18.2 acres. The property is bifurcated between commercial and residential 6, and the applicant is requesting Plant City residential 20. This shows you the land use map as it stands today. Again, I already mentioned the bifurcation between the commercial and the residential 6. The commercial abutting North Park Road and the residential 6 abutting North Maryland Avenue. You can see the commercial corridor for this major interchange in Plant City between I-4 and Sam Allen Road. And if we look at how the map would look if it was approved by the City Commission, you'll see that it will change to that brown residential 20 to allow predominantly residential development. And the next slide shall show you the potential impacts. Currently, the site is approved for 180 dwelling units. You can also develop it with almost 165,000 square feet of commercial office uses. That would increase to 364 dwelling units, but correspondingly, the commercial entitlements would go down significantly from that original 164,000 to just under 20,000 square feet of general commercial office uses. Again, this is on the same timeline as the previous one. So we'll be having a virtual meeting with the Planning Board on June 24th. The Planning Commission's public hearing will be July 13th, and the City Commission meeting on transmittal hearing on August 10th. And we would expect if the City Commission does choose to direct staff to transmit that to DEO, that would come back for final consideration in October 2020. And I think I have one more slide after this just to show you the relative locations of all three plan amendments, all three map amendments, I should say, to each other. You can see two of them are located in the northeast area of Plant City. And of course, the first one I mentioned was located within the development of Walden Lake. And with that, I stand for any questions you have.
Okay, any questions? Okay, no questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to item number 9. This is the compensation review of our executive director, Melissa. Everybody should have received the information. It's part of the agenda. This should have taken place in April. However, since we did not have a meeting in April and then in May we had the virtual meeting, we're still having a virtual meeting, but we decided to do it in June. So I'm going to ask Tracy if he has anything to say, and then I will cover what I need to say. Tracy, do you have anything to say related to this or cover?
No, I don't, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Did want to mention that as part of this packet, the review that we performed on March 9th, 2020 is included. And that shows the ratings that we gave to Melissa. That's part of the third page of this, or actually it might be the second page. So let me see. Actually, looks like it's like the fifth of 5 pages in the packet that we were provided is the review. With regards to this item, there's 2 things that we need to consider. We need to consider look at Melissa's contract term, the actual term currently, and we need to look at any pay increases that we may want to consider. I did want to mention the pay increase could be actually a salary increase, or it could be a one-time bonus. In terms of the contract term ends at the end of 2022. So we may want to look at possibly extending it a few years, and that's something we can discuss. If we extend it, we could possibly, if we wanted to, we could extend it 3 years out to the end of 2025. That's one item we may want to consider doing. With regards to the contract, I did ask Melissa what the staff got in terms of raises in December. The staff raises went into effect in December, and staff raises range from 3% to 4.25%. Only 2 employees got 4.25%. Most staff, per discussions with Melissa, got 3.5%. There is obviously some questions with the COVID-19 and the state of what's going on right now as to there's some uncertainty as to what increases will be given next year. So just wanted to mention that to you. But any discussion, any comments concerning this? Like I said, there's 2 items I think we should probably consider. It's the term of the contract, which currently ends in the year 2022, just because we might want to look at extending that, because there is, if for some reason, that I think it gives the agency a little more stability, and staff knowing that the executive director is locked into a little bit longer contract. That's one reason I would propose looking at possibly extending that. And if we extended it 3 years, we'd put her out to 2025. That's one item just to consider. The other item is what type of pay increase, Melissa, we may want to offer. It could be, like I said, a salary increase, or it could be a one-time bonus. The reason I mentioned the one-time bonus is because of the uncertainty concerning with everything going on and what raises may be provided to staff next year. And I'll ask Melissa if she has any comments before we get into discussion, if there's anything she'd like to add. If I missed, I'll just open it up for questions or comments from or other board members. Melissa?
I would just add that, well, one, I appreciate you all even discussing this, but if there is anything considered related to the salary, I do think considering whether it's a portion or all of it in a bonus would be best for the agency, given the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty about future year budgets. We know what we have in this year's personnel budget, but there is a lot of uncertainty about next year's budget and whether or not at this time the county has not given us an indication as to whether or not merit increases will be considered in next year's budget.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Any comments from commissioners? Questions?
It's Commissioner Joseph, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Joseph, thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I'm in agreement with you. I think that the extension to, 3-year edition, I think you said 2025, is a good idea. I think for all the reasons that you mentioned, the continuity, giving staff and everyone we work with peace of mind going forward, that Melissa will be there. I did want to say that I think she's done a great job. I'm always put at ease knowing that Melissa's there because she is so thorough and just handles things really well. So as a planning commissioner, I wanted to definitely give her my thanks for the job that she does. And as for the 3%, 2%, 4% bonus, or if not, I'll sit back and listen to some more conversation about that. Obviously, with everything I just said, I do think some increase of some form is warranted because she does a great job. But as to what we're going to exactly land on, I think I'll listen a little bit more to some input.
Okay. Before I let Commissioner Dix, I just wanted to pose a question to Tracy. In terms of the motion, if we address the contract term and a salary or a bonus, my thought is it might make sense to do that as two separate motions just to make it a little cleaner. But I wanted to think is from a legal point, Tracy, do you have any concern with that?
No, I think that's an excellent idea. I was going to suggest that it might be done by two separate motions.
Okay, I just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you, Tracy. I think so. If we get to a point where we're talking about motions for extending the contract, and if that's something somebody would like to make a motion on, we'll make that, and then we can address the salary or bonus, however we want to do. But I think, like I said, I would propose that we do that as two separate ones just to keep it a little bit cleaner, and I think it'll make a little more sense. So, Commissioner Dix, I'll let you speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the extension of the contract, what was the term of the first contract?
If I remember correctly, the initial contract was 2 years, and then it was extended to be a 5-year contract in 2017, which is what ends in 2022.
That's my recollection too. And Tracy?
Sounds correct. I don't have the contract right here in front of me, but I believe there was a previous extension.
And I was asking that really in so far as sort of a leading question. If we were hiring you today, which I would be certainly in favor of wholeheartedly, but what would be the length of a contract that we would be offering is if we were starting right now? And I guess what I'm hearing in my mind is anywhere from 2 to 5 years.
I can answer. I would think that would probably be reasonable. I mean, obviously, 2 years seems kind of short for a contract, in my opinion, because if we had to hire a new executive director, we almost need a year lead time, at least in the past, in terms of getting out there. You're probably talking close to at least, I'd say 6 to 9 months. 6 months would be pretty short, I would think. So you probably, if you know you're going to be going out for a new executive director, I would think 9 months is the type of lead time you'd want to at least have in terms of advertising and everything.
And Melissa, are you looking for anything in particular? I mean, is there something that you are hoping to achieve with this?
Well, certainly I would say the stability in my contract term is probably the most important to me and my family, to know that that there's not something looming in a year and a half. Because my recollection is, as Mitch said, that it was about a year before Mr. Shermonte's he was retiring, so his drop, that you all started the process to start looking for an executive director. So I guess 2022 seems soon to this long range planner, and so stability in that regard would be what would mean the most to me.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, the term that you that you casually mentioned, but I'm sure that you had thought it through, was that 5 years? Is that correct?
It's actually the current contract, and this is for discussions with Melissa, ends end of year 2022. If we extended it 3 years, that would take it out to end of 2025. So and that would be, so it's, we've had so that would be a 3-year extension to the existing, would take it out to 2025. That's kind of what I had in my mind. I thought that seemed kind of reasonable, but like I said, I'm interested in hearing what you guys have to say too.
And to counsel, just real quickly, to Tracy, you have no quarrel with that if it came in the form of a motion. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and I'm comfortable with that, certainly. So if you want me to, we can at least begin the conversation and the discussion that I would move that we extend the contract and making that a pure motion, separating that from any compensation discussion.
Before you make that, let me just see if there's any other comments. Any other comments from anybody else? We can always discuss the motion once it's made and seconded, but any comments before Commissioner Dix makes this motion? Okay, Commissioner Dix, if you'd make the motion, that'd be great.
So done. There you go.
Second.
Okay.
Commissioner Joseph.
This has made the motion to extend the contract to for additional 3 years, which would end at the end of 2025. Commissioner Josephs, I believe, was the one who seconded.
Yes.
Okay. Any further discussion, comments, questions concerning this motion? Okay. No comments, questions. Let's take it to a vote. If we could have a roll call vote, that'd be great.
Thrower,
yes.
Bernstein,
Aye.
Cardenas,
Yes.
Dix,
Yes.
Green,
Yes.
Joseph,
Aye.
Kress,
Yes.
Marino,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Motion carried 9-0.
Okay, thank you. Going back to, so that's good. You got stability.
Thank you very much. I can't tell you how much that means to me that you have that kind of confidence in me.
Yep, it's well deserved. You've done a great job. So getting back to the salary, any kind of salary increase or bonus, any thoughts, concerns? Like I said, I gave some general information, but any thoughts, concerns from anyone? Like I said, employees in December got, typically it ranged from 3 to 4.25. 3.5 was the what most staff got. That was in December. Like I said, I was kind of, I'll just tell you where I'm thinking. I was kind of thinking of 2.5 or maybe 3, just given the uncertainty of next year. I mean, I almost was leaning towards 2.5 just because, and I was kind of thinking a bonus, to tell you the truth. But that's just my thought. Any other? Commissioner Dix?
Mr. Chairman, what you're saying there makes perfect sense. And I would, provided Melissa is acceptable to this, what I would do is if there's any budgetary concerns, to make that a bonus, as you're suggesting, but to amortize that over the remaining period in the year rather than one lump sum. And I concur with you on the amount.
Okay.
I would
trying to think about that.
Understand how that would work, right? Which I might not. I think it would be most helpful to the agency if anything came out of this fiscal year, which ends September 30th.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I think that might, especially since with budgeting and everything, I think it's probably better to do it as a one-time, I would think.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree that it should come out of this fiscal year. I was just trying to spread it out between now and so, into this fiscal year, September 30th.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes that. Yeah, I mean, as long as I would think she's paid before September 30th, so it comes out of this year's budget, this fiscal year budget. So,
yeah,
okay.
absolutely.
So, Commissioner Dix has made a motion to give. What was the percentage you stated? I
believe that you said 2.5%. I was following your lead on that.
Yeah, well, the 2.5% would be it'd be $4,077 based on the calculation based on Melissa's current salary, which is in the 163,105 is per discussions with Melissa. Is that correct? That's her current salary. 2.5% would calculate out to $4,077. Which, if we gave it as a bonus, it would be a bonus both during this current fiscal year.
Yeah, and
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Chairman, certainly that would be my motion so we can get into discussion on it. But I'm amenable to a lump sum at one time too. It's not a huge amount. I was simply trying to formulate it so that it's kind of like a salary increase, but not necessarily, because the budgetary outlook for the next fiscal year is so uncertain. But I'm not, I don't think it's a huge issue at that point.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, Commissioner Dix has a motion out there. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, I would second Commissioner Dick's motion. I think he's looking for a softer blow to the tit, but I would agree.
Okay, Commissioner Green seconds. Any further discussion? Any further discussion on the item? If there's no, okay, Tracy?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to be clear that the amount is included in the motion for clarity.
That's kind of how I took it, but Commissioner Dix, the amount of the, and that's my calculation. I mean, we could, my calculation, but 2.5% of the 163,105 was $4,077. It might have rounded. I may have rounded it down or up $1 or a few cents.
That's fine. Absolutely.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any concerns, Tracy, before we take a vote?
No, just wanted that to be clear.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? We'll take a roll call vote. All in favor, say aye when your name is called.
Thrower.
Aye.
Bernstein.
Aye.
Cardenas.
Aye.
Dix.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Joseph.
Aye.
Press.
Yes.
Marino.
Aye.
Powell.
Aye.
Motion carried 9-0.
Okay. Thank you. That's good. We got that out of the way. Thank you, Melissa. I agree with others' comments, Commissioner Dix's comments too. That I think you've been doing a great job, and we're glad to have you here. And it's good to have some stability in terms of knowing the contract goes a little bit longer. So I do agree that's a good thing for the agency and for employees, knowing that you hopefully will be here for at least through 2025. So
yes. Well, thank you. Thank you all very much.
I am going to move. Oh, next up is Executive Director's Report.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So I emailed out the Executive Director's Report on Friday. So hopefully you all got that. I wanted to focus on a couple of things, given that we have a short time before our public hearing. Next week on June 15th, we're going to be having a workshop at 5:30 to go over the Waimama Village Residential 2 land use category study and what those drafts are looking like, as well as the residential planned 2 land use category. So we knew we wouldn't have enough time on today's agenda for that kind of a workshop. So we are scheduling that next Monday at 5:30. The agenda items should be hitting your email this afternoon or evening, and the text that goes along with those will be posted on our website on Thursday. That's something that is still having some continued tweaking on it from staff, so it'll be posted on Thursday for you all to review. But that will be not televised on HTV. It will be virtual, just like this. You'll get another email from GoToWebinar. So hopefully you've rescued those from your junk and gotten those into your inbox. So that should be, that's what we're planning there. On July 13th, I wanted to also be clear, we will be having a regular meeting and a public hearing. We have so many things that are backed up from the past few months that we will be needing to have both a regular meeting and a public hearing. We'll be having some county amendments as well as those Plant City and Temple Terrace plan amendments that Mark gave you the briefing on. We have been looking at some implementation of some portions of our strategic plan related to outreach and education, and have staff has developed some in-house resources related to creating some videos about projects and things that we're doing to share on social media, as well as to share if, for example, on the website when we do something related to a land use study like we are now. In addition, we have been in discussions with 83 Degrees Media about them doing some professional videos, not that what our staff would do are not professional. They would be very professional, but it just would be a different exposure of the videos, because in addition to them creating the videos, they also would share them through their media platform. And those would be more public education opportunities to talk about major issues like the relationship between planning and health, or safety in along the lines of Vision Zero. So that's something that if we did that contract, it would be about $2,500 per video production, and that is inclusive of their sharing of the videos through their publications and website online. So I wanted to mention that to make sure that there wasn't any concerns about us pursuing that type of a contract with 83 Degrees. The next thing, two other things I wanted to mention, given everything that has been happening in our community over the last few weeks, and by community, I mean not just Hillsborough County, but our country as a whole, there's been a lot of discussion internal to our agency about whether or not we are doing enough to address equity in our planning efforts. And the planners here are very committed to doing a better job than we have been about making sure the concerns of all members of our community are embodied in our plans. And so there are a couple of things that we have been discussing doing. One is looking at our comprehensive plans sort of through an equity lens to see where there are things that might be problematic, things that may be contributing to inequities in the community, and then also where are the opportunities for us to improve upon that and do better. As part of that doing better, we've been talking about having with the MPO some listening sessions. They have to update their non-discrimination plan for the MPO later in the next 12 months. And we thought there would be an opportunity to go out and hear from the community what some of their concerns were, not just on transportation, but also about land use and affordable housing and things of that nature. It would fit in very timely with the update of some of the other sections of the county's comprehensive plan, as well as the opportunity to fold those into future amendments to Tampa's plan as we continue to update that more on an evolving basis as opposed to one big update. So those are some of the ideas that staff has initially brainstormed. We're very open to if you all have feedback and ideas and things that we can do better in this regard. We're ready and able to do that. So I wanted to bring that up. And then the last item I had was just an update on the agency operations and facilities, because as you can tell, most of us are still at home. There are some staff who are going in the office, like you saw, Yanika and Krista and Will were all there at the office. And so staff come in as they need to. At this point, County Center is still not open to the public. So we continue to work with building facilities on the different protocols and procedures that they're putting in place. They have encouraged us to continue telecommuting as long as possible and to the greatest degree that we can, particularly given that our work lends itself to that, and we're not a heavy customer walk-in agency. They are working through how to have folks like the tax collector, who are heavy walk-in client base, relocate to the first floor to minimize the public going up in the elevators and things of that nature. So we're trying to do our part by continuing to telecommute to the great degree. We are working through what a reopening plan for staff starting to come back into the office in a phased way would look like, with the idea towards at some point, maybe 50% of the office being there one day, 50% being there the other day. We have a couple areas where we have cubicles that are some challenges in that regard. They have facilities has also gone through and updated what the capacities are for all of our meeting rooms. So your normal boardroom can now hold 25 people. So with appropriate social distancing, and they've marked off which chairs people can sit in and which ones they can't to accommodate social distancing. So at the point that we start having where the governor's order does not cover continuing to have virtual meetings, we will have to look at whether or not our boardroom is the right space to have them in. As Mark suggested, there are facilities like the Trinkle Center in Plant City that for that amendment might be a larger space, allow us to accommodate more than 25 people at a time and have them in that space. So we're exploring a lot of different ideas in that regard. And we'll keep you posted if something changes and the meetings are not continuing to be virtual. And that is my update.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Under other business, I don't have any chairs business. Is there any old business? Okay, is there any new business? Any committee reports? Commissioner Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't be too long here because I answered a lot of questions, but because then I spoke about the AHAB meeting earlier today, but we finally did meet after a couple of months. We're waiting on some updates on when the governor is going to sign budget and some things of that nature, so we know if the Sadowski Trust is still going to get fully funded. Still being proposed, but that's still obviously like up in the air until budgets are signed and approved by the governor. So we're just kind of in a holding pattern right now. So then that's my report.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Powell. Any other committee reports? Commissioner Marina.
The Global Roadways Committee, our last meeting, that was just mainly about our public participation plan. And then what we had missed, just because the schedules didn't match up, the May MPO meeting was the approval of the Unified Work Plan. So there were some projects that came out of the Global Roadways Committee that were very well received by the rest of the MPO members, and also the June 30th MPO meeting. That will be the public hearing coming up for that discussion.
Okay, thank you. Any other committee reports? Okay, no other committee reports. I did want to mention we do have the Planning and Design Awards on October 27th at the Strauss Center. So just wanted to mention that because they'll be here before we know it. But and we also have a Hillsborough County and a City of Tampa public hearing beginning at 5:30 is the Hillsborough County public hearing. So just wanted everybody to know we'll have that public hearing. Otherwise, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Yes, and if all the commissioners can go and click on the next link for the public hearing, we'll be all set.